The establishment of textile and apparel industries was one of Sumer's first material triumphs. The advent of spinning and weaving machines in England in the 1760s is regarded as the start of our own industrial revolution. Since then, the majority of emerging countries aim to create a textile industry as the first step towards industrialization. This has been the case not only since the 17th century, but since man's first significant civilization, according to the evidence. Before the introduction of agriculture, providing flax, and the domestication of animals, which provided him with wool, man could not have manufactured woven fabrics. The scholarly consensus is that textile weaving first appeared in Mesopotamia approximately 3800 BCE. Sumer was also known for its clothing in ancient times, in addition to its woven fabrics. During the storming of Jericho, according to Joshua 7:21, a certain person couldn't resist the urge to keep one good coat of Shinar, which he had found in the city, despite the fact that the penalty was death. The clothes of Shinar, or Sumer, were so valuable that individuals were willing to risk their lives to receive them. In Sumerian antiquity, there was a rich vocabulary for describing both clothing and its manufacturers. Tug was the name of the basic garment, which was without doubt the forerunner in both style and the name of the Roman toga. Such garments were tug tushe, which in Sumerian meant garment which is worn wrapped around. Ancient pictures indicate not only a staggering amount of diversity and wealth in terms of clothing, but also elegance, with good judgment and coordination among garments, hairdo, headdresses, and jewelry. Agriculture was another significant Sumerian achievement. Rivers were employed to irrigate year-round crops through a massive system of irrigation canals in an area with only seasonal rains. Even though Mesopotamia, or the land between the rivers, was a veritable food basket, the Latin name Armeniaca is a loan word from the Akkadian Armanu. The Spanish word Damasco, Damascus tree, refers to the apricot tree. The Kerasos comes from the Akkadian Karshu. All evidence points to Mesopotamia as the source of these and other fruits and vegetables in Europe. Saffron is derived from the Akkadian Azupirnu, crocus derived from Korkanu, through the krokos in Greek. Cumin is derived from Kamanu, hyssop derived from Zupu, and myrrh derived from Muru. The list goes on, and in many cases, Greece provided the physical and entomological link that allowed these land-based items to reach Europe. Sumerian cuisine consisted primarily of onions, lentils, beans, cucumbers, cabbage, and lettuce. The breadth and complexity of ancient Mesopotamian food preparation processes, as well as their cuisine, is equally amazing. Text and illustration support Sumerian knowledge of flour conversion, which they used to make a range of leavened and unleavened breads, porridges, pastries, cakes, and biscuits. Beer was also made from barley, and technical guides for the process have been discovered among the books. Grapes and date palms were used to make wine. Sheep, goats, and cows provided milk, which was consumed, cooked with, and converted into yogurt, butter, cream, and cheeses. Fish was a staple of the diet, mutton plentiful, and pig meat, which the Sumerians raised in enormous herds, was regarded as a great delicacy. It's possible that geese and ducks were saved for the gods' banquets. The gourmet cuisine of ancient Mesopotamia developed in temples and in the service of the gods, according to ancient writings. One text described the offering to the gods of loaves of barley bread, loaves of emmer bread, a paste of honey and cream, dates, pastry, beer, wine, milk, cedar sap, and cream. Roasted meat was offered with libations of prime beer, wine, and milk. A specific cut of bull was prepared according to a strict recipe calling for fine flour made to a dough and water, prime beer, and wine, mixed with animal fats, aromatic ingredients made from hearts of plants, nuts, malt, and spices. Instructions for the daily sacrifice to the gods of the city of Uruk called for the serving of 5 different beverages with the meals, and specified what the millers in the kitchen and the chef working at the kneading trough should do. As we come across poems that laud the glories of good dishes, our respect for Sumerian culinary art deepens. Indeed, what can one say while reading a millennia-old kakavin recipe? This bird has been cooked and consumed in the wine of drinking, the fragrant water and the oil of unction. Without efficient transportation infrastructure, a prosperous economy and society with such large material industries could not have formed. For watercraft movement of people, goods, and animals, the Sumerians employed their 2 large rivers and a constructed network of canals. The world's first boats are shown in some of the earliest depictions. Many early documents indicate Sumerians engaged in deep-water seafaring, utilizing a variety of ships to travel to distant countries in quest of metals, rare woods and stones, and other things unavailable in Sumer. A section on shipping was discovered in an Akkadian dictionary of Sumerian language, which listed 105 Sumerian phrases for various ships based on their size, location, or purpose, for cargo, passengers, or the exclusive use of certain gods. A total of 69 Sumerian phrases related to ship personnel and construction were also translated into Akkadian. Such sophisticated vessels and technical vocabulary could only have come from a long seafaring tradition. The wheel was initially employed for overland transportation in Sumer. Its creation and widespread use enabled a wide range of vehicles from carts to chariots, and likely gave Sumer the distinction of being the first to use both ox power and horsepower for movement. Professor Samuel Kramer, one of Time's famous Sumerologists, studied the literary legacy discovered beneath Sumer's mounds in 1956. Each of the 25 chapters from the tablets of Sumer described a Sumerian first, including the first schools, the first bicameral congress, the first historian, the first pharmacopoeia, the first farmer's almanac, the first cosmogony and cosmology, the first Job, the first proverbs and sayings, the first literary debates, the first Noah, the first library catalog, man's first heroic age, his first legal codes and social reforms, his first medicine, agriculture, and the quest for global peace and harmony. As a direct result of the development and adoption of writing, the first schools were created in Sumer. By beginning of the 3rd millennium BCE, archaeological evidence, such as actual school buildings, and textual evidence, such as exercise tablets, suggest the existence of a formal system of education. In Sumer, there were literally hundreds of scribes, from low scribes to high scribes, royal scribes, temple scribes, and scribes who held high state authority. Some of them worked as instructors in the schools, and we can still read their essays about the schools, their purposes and goals, curriculum, and teaching methods. Not only language and writing, but also science of the day, botany, zoology, geography, mathematics, and theology, were taught at the schools. Older literary works were studied and duplicated while new ones were written. The Umiya, expert professor, oversaw the schools, and the faculty always comprised a man in charge of drawing, and a man in charge of Sumerian, as well as a man in charge of the whip. One school alumnus told how he had been beaten for missing school, for insufficient neatness, for loitering, for not being silent, for misbehaving, and even for not having neat handwriting on his clay tablets. The conflict between Erech and the city-state of Kish is the subject of an epic poem about Erech's history. The epic tale describes how Kish sent envoys to Erech to offer a peaceful solution to their quarrel. However, Gilgamesh, ruler of Erech at the time, preferred to fight rather than compromise. The fact that he had put the topic to a vote in the Assembly of the Elders, a local senate, is fascinating. The Lord Gilgamesh, before his elders of the city, put the matter and seeks out decision. Let us not submit to the house of Kish. Let us smite it with weapons. The elders' assembly, on the other hand, was intended for negotiations. Unfazed, though, Gilgamesh took the issue to the assembly of the fighting men, who voted in favor of war. The story's importance stems from the fact that it reveals that a Sumerian king had to address the matter of war and peace to the first bicameral Congress almost 5,000 years ago. Kramer awarded the title of the first historian to Entemena, king of Lagash, who recorded his war with Umma on clay cylinders. The inscription of Entemena was straight prose, produced merely as a factual record of history, unlike other texts that were literary works or epic poems whose themes were historical events. Because Assyrian and Babylonian inscriptions were deciphered long before Sumerian records, it was long assumed that Babylonian monarch Hammurabi authored and decreed the first code of laws, about 1900 BCE. However, as Sumer's culture was revealed, it became evident that Sumer had the firsts in terms of the legal system, social concepts, and fair administration of justice. A Sumerian monarch of the city-state of Ishanuna, northeast of Babylon, enacted regulations that fixed maximum rates for commodities and rental of wagons and boats long before Hammurabi, ensuring that the impoverished were not persecuted. There were other rules governing crimes against person and property, as well as family matters and master-servant relationships. Lipit Ishtar, monarch of Isin, had enacted a law much earlier. The 38 rules on a partially intact tablet, copy of the original inscribed on stone stelae, deal with real estate, slaves and servants, marriage and inheritance, boat hire, oxen hire, and tax defaults. Lipit Ishtar said in the preface to this code that he was acting on the orders of the great gods, who had commanded him to bring well-being to the Sumerians and the Akkadians, as Hammurabi also stated. Lipit Ishtar was not, however, the first Sumerian law encoder. Copy of rules inscribed by Ur-Nammu, monarch of Ur, approximately 2350 BCE, more than half a millennium before Hammurabi, have been discovered on fragments of clay tablets. The laws were enacted on the god Nanar's authority to stop and punish grabbers of citizens' oxen, sheep, and donkeys, so that the orphan will not fall prey to the wealthy, the widow not fall prey to the powerful, the man of 1 shekel not fall prey to the man of 60 shekels. Ur-Nammu also decreed honest and unchangeable weights and measurements. However, the Sumerian legal system and administration of justice date back considerably further. By 2600 BCE, the world had changed dramatically. So much must have happened in Sumer that Ensi-Urukagina felt compelled to implement reforms. Scholars have described a long inscription by him as a priceless record of man's earliest social reform based on a feeling of liberty, equality, and fairness, a French Revolution imposed by a ruler 4,400 years before, July 1789. Urukagina's reform decree listed the evils of his period first, followed by the reforms. The main problems were supervisors' improper use of their authority to take the best for themselves, abuse of official standing, and monopolistic groups' extortion of high prices. Reform Edict outlawed all of these, as well as a slew of others. For a good donkey or house, an official could no longer establish his own price. A simple citizen could no longer be compelled by a big man. Blind, destitute, widowed, and orphaned people's rights were reaffirmed. Nearly 5,000 years ago, a divorced woman was granted legal protection. How long had Sumerian civilization lasted for a fundamental overhaul to become necessary? Urukagina said that his god Ningrisu had asked him to return the decrees of bygone days, implying that it had been a long time. The plain conclusion is that we need to go back to even older systems and regulations. The Sumerian laws were upheld by a judicial system that painstakingly recorded and archived sessions, judgments, and contracts. A court was normally made up of 3 or 4 judges, one of whom was a professional royal judge, and the others drawn from a panel of 36 men. Sumerians were concerned with justice, whereas Babylonians were concerned with making rules and regulations. They believed the gods created monarchs to provide justice in the realm. There are several parallels to be found here with the Old Testament conception of justice and morality. The Hebrews were ruled by judges even before they had kings. Rulers were assessed not on their conquest or money, but on how far they performed the righteous thing. The Jewish New Year is a 10-day period during which men's deeds are weighed and reviewed in order to decide their fate in the next year. After all, the first Hebrew patriarch, Abraham, came from the Sumerian city of Ur-Nammu, and his code. Thus, it's probably more than a coincidence that the Sumerians believed in a deity named Nanshi, who annually judged mankind in the same fashion. Sumerian concern for justice, or lack thereof, is also expressed in the earliest story of Job. Kramer was able to read a good portion of a Sumerian poem by piecing together fragments of clay tablet at the Istanbul Museum of Antiquities, which, like the biblical book of Job, dealt with the complaint of a righteous man who, instead of being blessed by the gods, was made to suffer all manner of loss and disrespect. He shouted out in agony, "My righteous speech has been transformed into a lie." The unidentified suffering petitions his God in the second portion, similar to some passages in the Hebrew Psalms. "My God, you who are my Father, who begot me, I lift up my face beseeching you. How long will you neglect me and leave me unprotected, leave me without guidance?" Then follows a happy ending. The righteous words, the pure words uttered by him, his God accepted. His God withdrew his hand from evil pronouncement. Preceding the biblical book of Ecclesiastes by some 2 millennia, Sumerian proverbs conveyed many of the same concepts and witticisms. "If we are doomed to die, let us spend. If we shall live long, let us save. When a poor man dies, do not try to revive him. He who possesses much silver may be happy. He who possesses much barley may be happy. But who has nothing at all can sleep. It is not the heart which leads to enmity, it is the tongue which leads to enmity. In a city without watchdogs, the fox is the overseer." Sumerian civilization material and spiritual achievements were complemented by a significant development in the performing arts. In March 1974, a group of researchers from the University of California, Berkeley, made headlines when they declared that they had cracked the code on the world's oldest song. They were able to decipher and play musical notes recorded on a cuneiform tablet discovered at Ugarit on the Mediterranean coast around 1800 BCE. "We always knew there was music in the ancient Assyrio-Babylonian culture," the Berkeley researchers noted, "but we didn't realize it had the same heptonic diatonic scale that is characteristic of contemporary Western music and of Greek music from the first millennium BCE until this deciphering. It was formerly assumed that Western music originated in Greece, It has recently been proven that our music, like so much else of Western culture, originated in Mesopotamia. This isn't surprising, given that the Mesopotamians were known to seek international harmony and concord through musical tones, according to Greek philosopher Philo. Music and song, without a doubt, must be considered a Sumerian first. Professor Crocker could only play the ancient music by building a lyre, similar to those discovered in the Ur ruins. Musical key numbers and a coherent musical theory can be found in texts from the 2nd millennia BCE, and Professor Kilmer herself wrote that many Sumerian hymnal texts had what appeared to be musical notations in the margins. She stated, "The Sumerians and their successors had a rich musical life." It's no surprise then that seals and tablets represent a wide range of musical instruments as well as singers and dancers performing. Music and singing, like so many other Sumerian triumphs, began in the temples. However, after beginning in the service of the gods, these performance arts spread outside the temples. A common phrase about the fees charged by singers used a classic Sumerian play on words. A singer whose voice is not lovely is a poor singer indeed. Many Sumerian love songs have been discovered, and they were almost certainly sung to music. The most moving is a lullaby written by a mother and sung to her sick child. Come sleep, come to my son. Hurry, sleep, to my son. Put to sleep his restless eyes. You are in pain, my son. I am troubled, I am struck dumb. I gaze up to the stars. The new moon shines down on your face. Your shadow will shed tears for you. Lie in your sleep, my son. May the goddess of growth be your ally. May you have an eloquent guardian in heaven. May you achieve a reign of happy days. May a wife be your support. May a son be your future lot. Not only is the conclusion that Sumer was the root of Western music in structure and harmonic arrangement the noteworthy thing about such music and songs, the fact that the music and poems do not seem foreign or alien at all, so we listen to them or read them, even in their depth of feeling and sentiment, is also remarkable. Indeed, when we consider the magnificent Sumerian civilization, we discover that not only our morals and sense of justice, our laws, architecture, arts, and technology founded in Sumer, but that all Sumerian institutions are so familiar and so close to us. We're all Sumerian at heart, it appears. The archaeologist Spade unearthed Nippur, a once religious center of Sumer and Akkad, after excavating at Lagash. Many of the 30,000 writings discovered there have never been studied. Schoolhouses going back to the 3rd millennium BCE were discovered at Shoruppak. Scholars discovered gorgeous vases, jewelry, swords, chariots, gold, silver, copper, and bronze helmets, the remains of weaving factory, court documents, and a colossal ziggurat whose ruins still dominate the landscape at Ur. Archaeologists discovered pre-Sargonic temples and artistic statues at En-Shamuna and Adab. Inscriptions about early empires were created by Umma. Monumental buildings and a ziggurat dating back at least to 3000 BCE were discovered at Kish. Archaeologists discovered Uruk, or Erech, in the 4th millennium BCE. They discovered evidence of the first use of a potter's wheel, as well as the first colorful pottery baked in a kiln. The earliest stone structures discovered to date is a limestone block pavement. The earliest ziggurat, a gigantic man-made mound atop of which rose a white temple and a crimson temple, was first discovered at Uruk by archaeologists. The first inscribed text as well as the first cylinder seals were discovered. The excellence of the seals upon their first appearance in Uruk period is astounding, Jack Finnegan observed about the latter. The advent of the Metal Age can also be seen at other Uruk-era sites. H.R. Hall discovered ancient ruins in the town of El Ubaid in 1919. The place gave its name to the first era of Sumerian civilization, a according to academics. Sumerian cities from the time period may be found all over Mesopotamia. Clay bricks, plastered walls, mosaic decorations, cemeteries with brick-lined graves, painted and decorated ceramic ware with geometric designs, copper mirrors, imported turquoise beads, paint for eyelids, copper-headed tomahawks, cloth, houses, and above all, monumental temple buildings were all produced in the southern Zagros foothills. Further south, archaeologists discovered Eridu, the first Sumerian city according to ancient writings. As the excavations went deeper, they discovered a temple devoted to Enki, Sumer's god of knowledge, that had been renovated numerous times. The layers clearly brought the researchers back to Sumerian civilization beginnings, 2500 BCE, 2800 BCE, 3000 BCE, and 3500 BCE. The Spades then came across the foundation of the original Enki temple. There was virgin dirt beneath that. Nothing had been built before it. It was around 3800 BCE at the time. That was the start of civilization. It was not merely the world's first civilization in traditional sense. It was a vast society, all-encompassing and far more advanced than the ancient societies that came after it in many aspects. It was without a doubt civilization that gave rise to our own. Man attained this remarkable civilization in Sumer approximately 3800 BCE, after beginning to use stones as tools some 2 million years earlier. The confusing fact is that scholars have no idea who the Sumerians were, where they came from, how or why their civilization arose. This was described as astonishing and outstanding, a flame that sprang up so abruptly. Ancient Mesopotamian scholar Leo Oppenheim emphasized the remarkably brief era in which the civilization arose, because it had appeared so suddenly, unexpectedly, and seemingly out of nowhere. Joseph Campbell wrote, "With stunning abruptness there appears in this little Sumerian mud garden a whole cultural syndrome that has since constituted the germinal unit of all high civilizations of the world."